Ba-dip-dip-dip-dip. And that's the theme song, and now we're ready to get right into it. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be looking at Shakespeare's Sonnets, Shakespeare, Sonnets. And there are 154 of them, and they are rippers. I mean, these are some really, really tremendous pieces of poetry. So this is going to be volume 1 right here. I'm not sure how many parts I'm going to make. Probably a lot of parts, but this is definitely part 1. Each part is going to look at a specific sonnet, and it's going to look at how you break them apart. What are the pieces you want to examine, and how does everything work together? With that, so I'm going to start by talking about structure. Ultimately, we'll talk about all of the aspects of the sonnet, but today is going to start with structure, and then we're going to take a big detour through theme, because you might be saying to yourself at this point, why would I want to read a sonnet anyway in the first place or the second place? So we'll talk about some elements of structure first, then we'll take a big detour. This should be, I think it's going to be exciting. It's going to have a lot of surprises. So structure. All right, I'm gonna use my pencil here on this beautiful. This is sonnet number 2 right here. It's a good one. So the first thing you want to do when you're dealing with sonnets is you want to bracket the quatrains. There are 1, 2, 3 quatrains per sonnet, and you're not gonna believe what quatrain means. It means a 4-line piece of structure. So it's spelled Q-U-A-T-R-A-I-N. So this is the first, second, and third quatrain. At the end, we have something that is called a rhyming couplet. Rhyming couplet. And to have another layer of analysis, we also have this thing, which is called an octave, which usually, a lot of times, is going to be communicating some meaning, and this thing, which is called a sestet. Octave, oct meaning 8 lines. This means 6 lines. They're just pieces of structure when we're looking at sonnets. This is a Shakespearean sonnet or an English sonnet, and so our structure has got 3 quatrains. What are we going to do with those quatrains, though? Oh man, we're going to do some amazing stuff with them. And then plus 1 rhyming couplet for a total of 14 lines, plus 1 rhyming couplet for a total of 14 lines. This rhyming couplet a lot of times has a special function, and so we give it a special name sometimes, especially when it acts like this, a coda. You know, a coda in music is the end, and a lot of times our rhyming couplet at the end has like a coda or resolution kind of a feel to it. So it has a special function, resolution, has a special function in our in the structure. And you get a feel for that if I read this last one right here. I'm just gonna read it. You just gotta, there's like a period at the end. This were to be new made when thou art old, and see thy blood warm when thou feelst it cold. So it feels like the ending, feels like a coda. So that's our structure. We also have a rhyme structure, R-H-Y-M-E, structure, which is generally, it is like, well, I'm gonna draw it out with my different colors. Since I have different colors, might as well use them. We've got like A, whoop, A, B, B, C, C, D. Isn't this exciting? D. I made my pencils nice and sharp, and that's what happens when they're sharp. E, and E, and F, and F, and G, and G. So, when 40 winters shall besiege thy brow, and dig deep trenches in thy beauty's field, thy youth's proud livery, so gazed on now, will be a tattered weed of small worth held. Now, this to you is going to appear like a slant rhyme, but really it's because the language has changed. So field used to rhyme with held, and if you want to bend it one way or the other, felled, held, you might want to do that, or you might not. So you can see that there's always a skip line, and then there's a different rhyme for each quatrain, 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 and then a different scheme for the end where there's a G and a G. That's what gives it that resolution feeling. So that's another aspect of structure. That's our rhyme structure. So now we know we have quatrains happening. We know we have a rhyme structure that's happening. Now I want to talk about the meter, which is iambic pentameter. And this is where we take our big diversion through. Pentameter. This is where we're going to take a little bit of a diversion, because iambic pentameter is the rhyme scheme, is the meter that was used for Chaucer. Chaucer wrote 200 years before. The first sonnet started circulating in 1693. Chaucer did his work, 1593 is when the first sonnets started circulating. 1393 or 92. Both of these are 92s. This is when Chaucer was doing his work. But I do want to talk about Chaucer because he's important. He's important because they don't call him the grandpa of all English poetry in the language, for no reason. So we're going to take a little diversion here. We're going to talk about what the sonnets are about. And I feel like Chaucer is an appropriate place to start if we're going to talk about what the sonnets are about. So I'm going to need a lot of space down here. Stick with me. And here we go, talking about Chaucer and the sonnets. So these sonnets, everybody has a grip on what the main subject of the sonnets are. Fill it in your mind if you want to. That subject is love. But love, as Chaucer explored for us, has like some different aspects. And Chaucer, in his first two Canterbury tales, he really gives us the full scope of what love can be like. And he does that through the Knight's Tale and the Miller's Tale. So I want to talk about those two extreme versions of what love is, because they were a huge influence on Shakespeare and his own explorations of love in this set of 154 sonnets. So, in the Knight's Tale, we have love on the highest pedestal imaginable. So we have a love object that is like unattainable. Like it's love at first sight, and it's love that you see far away, but like so beautiful that your greatest hope for your love could be that if you could hold your love before you died, you would be complete. So love has been idealized basically beyond the bounds of earth. Idealized beyond the bounds of earth. So you have to enlist the help of gods. You have to enlist, you're talking about angels, choirs, people sitting on clouds looking down at you, and that's what love can be and should be and is. And the object of your love is fair, which means blonde, and chaste, which means she has kept herself pure, and she is docile. And you can tell that I'm speaking of love from the man's perspective because like man is the actor. I'm going to say like man, and not humankind man, but like a man as actor. And like the woman is the subject of the action. She receives the action, but the man, the masculine energy, is moving everything forward with his desire. This kind of love is serious. It is aristocratic. Kings, knights, ladies in waiting, aristocratic. I don't know what word I'm spelling here, but I think that's supposed to be aristocratic. And it's like flowery poetry and solemn vows. Solemn vows are all part of the fun. So this is the Knight's Tale. Now the story is in Canterbury Tales, and it sets up like a very lofty perspective on what love is. Immediately after the Knight's Tale, we have the Miller's Tale, which was told by a man so drunk he almost fell off his horse while he was telling the story. And Chaucer himself, the narrator, felt like he had to warn the readers or warn his audience that he had to tell this story. He had to tell it the way it was. So in this story, we have love, and I'll put love in quotes because it really questions if love even exists. So we see love primarily in this story as a physical act. As a physical act, and it is very attainable in this particular story. And we also have that love is not idealized beyond the bounds of earth. In fact, love is very earthy. In fact, sometimes it's literally on the ground. And the love object in this story is described as skinny as a weasel. So that's, in a lot of ways, skinny as a weasel is, the love object here was fair. Here the love object is dark. Dark skin, dark eyes, dark hair. And this particular love object is also very flexible, like with the truth, with morality. And lying and cheating is just part of the fun, I guess. And it really is fun. Like, it's a game. It's amusing. This story is also like a working class tale of people who have jobs. And in this text, people act on impulse. So what does this have to do with Shakespeare? Well, in Shakespeare's 153 sonnets, he kind of took these two extremes and he explored the interaction between them and how they feed into each other in different experiences through time. Along the way, he will raise, so if we have the subject as love, what are the themes? Or what are the themes on love? Well, they are myriad. So themes involve, and this will be a very simplified version of these different themes that we find at different times in the sonnets, but we have immortality, and the idea that poetry can make someone immortal. We also have betrayal, because the 154 sonnets can be read as an extended exploration of experiences with two different lovers, maybe four, maybe six, depending on whether or not you interpret the subject of the different poems. So let me say that about sonnets. So if the subject is love, how is it delivered? How is the message delivered? Sonnets are almost like, so I'm going to write that right here. Sonnet, it's like a one-person dialogue. It's like a one-person dialogue written to the beloved. But we never see the beloved's response. So it's like a one-way conversation where information and feelings and reactions are moving in one direction, and we have to infer from how these change from sonnet to sonnet to sonnet what effect they're having, if they're having any effect. And this fits with history, because the first sonnets were gifts. So a sonnet it's a gift. It's a gift of language, and it's a gift of thought and reason, and it's structured to impact a specific person. So all sonnets have like a speaker and a receiver, or the poet and the two love objects that we'll find as we move through the sonnets. One of them is a young man, and so a lot of times we'll call him the lovely youth, because he's quite a bit younger than the poet. We have the lovely youth, and we have the dark lady. And there's a lot of speculation for who the lovely youth could be, or who the lovely youth might represent. One of them is like real person. Like this is actually someone that Shakespeare might have had interactions with in his life at court. Another one that's kind of fun is that the lovely youth represents a younger version of himself. Younger version of William Shakespeare. Another possibility is that the lovely youth represents a potential patron. That the first 126 sonnets were written to try to convince someone to support the continued poetry, because William Shakespeare was trying to get paid. I mean, he really was. So back down here to the different themes that we have: immortality, betrayal, we've got dreams and fantasy. We've got immortality's brother, death. We've got lust. We've got competition. Just a rival poet in certain sonnets that's referred to. We have venereal disease. So it's kind of like, and we see both of them, and that's why the sonnets are fun, because maybe in the same poem we'll see your love brings me immortality, but also because of the way the poems are structured, maybe what we're really talking about is venereal disease and procreation. We find those heavily in the first 17. Procreation, thinking itself is a subject. frustration. And I'm at about 20 minutes, so I'm just going to finish up loss. Beauty, of course, U-T-Y. And finally, time, fitting, as I'm out of time. But we're not. There'll be a part 2 that'll start to look at like probably some more elements of structure. The next element of structure we need to talk about are sentences, because these poems are built of sentences, and that how those sentences are built is an important aspect of structure that conveys meaning. Peace.